Alright, in this video we are going to see how to use Texas Instruments BA2 Plus calculator to solve time value of money related problems. So let's have a brief overview first. Whenever you try to solve any TVM problems, you will be using this row of buttons that are colored white. All of these buttons have two functions. One is primary, that is the labeling of the button, and another one is the secondary function, which is just above and written in yellow. So let's see what each of these button does. The first button, that is labeled N, you use this button to enter the time periods of your problem or to calculate the time period. The next one, that is labeled I by Y, you use to enter or calculate the interest rate or discount rate. Then this button PV stands for present value. So as you can guess, you enter or calculate the present value of your given problem. The next one, this button is used to enter the payments of a problem. This is especially useful when we try to solve the annuity problems. And finally, this one is used for the future value. And of course, all this sounds much more complicated in abstractions, but when we show how these buttons works with examples, you will see how absolutely straightforward all this is. Alright, so two things you need to make sure that are set correctly is this thing and this other thing. The first one is basically the number of payments per year, and the second one is our compounding frequency, so number of compounding per year. Initially, let's set these two values to 1, and we'll see later on what to do if these things are not as ideal as 1. So to do this, first press this button, then press this button. It will bring you to a menu where you can set P by Y and C by Y. In my case, it's already set to 1, so I don't have to do anything. But if it is set to any other value in your calculator, what you do is you press 1 first and then you press enter, and go back to this again, press 1, press enter. Alright, let's move on to positive and negative cash flows. Well, when we do any kind of problem that has cash flows, you will need to tell the calculator which ones are your positive cash flows and which ones are your negative cash flows. For example, let's say you deposit some money, some X amount of money in some bank, and after N period, whatever that may be, you receive Y amount of money. So in your calculator, you need to put negative X as your present value because it's a cash outflow from your perspective, and the money that you'll receive after N years is a positive cash flow, which so you will need to enter positive value for this one, and you will see what all this means very soon with an example. Alright, then finally, one more thing. Every time you start using this row of buttons, make sure you first start with clearing the previous memory. To do this, you will press the secondary button first, then you'll press clear TVM, which is this button, and it will clear the memory of the previous problem. Let's see how all this works in an example. Alright, you open a savings account at some bank and you start with $1,000, and stated annual interest rate is 5%. How much will you get after 10 years? So basically the question asks you to calculate the future value of your investment. Now cash flow timeline is like this. At time t is equal to 0, you have a cash outflow of $1,000, and then you wait for 10 years and you receive the future value of your investment. So this one is our negative cash flow because it's in cash outflow, and this one is a positive cash flow because this is the money that you'll receive. So make sure to differentiate between these two using the negative sign. So to start off, first clear the memory. To do this, press this button, then you press clear TVM button, and now put the inputs. Our number of periods is 10, so let's put 10 in N. Then state the interest rate, which is 5%. Don't put 5% or 0.05, directly put 5 in I by Y. So press 5, then press this button. So the interest rate is set to 5%. Then tell the calculator what is your present value. So in our case it is 1,000, and this is a cash outflow, right? So you press this button to turn this 1,000 into negative 1,000, then press this button and you'll see that present value is set to negative 1,000. Alright, then let's set payment to 0. Why did I do it? Because as you can see, we don't have any intermediate cash flows. We only have one cash inflow and a cash outflow at the end. If we had intermediate cash flows like an annuity, we would have utilized this button, but for this simple problem it is set to 0. Then finally, don't press this button because you don't have the value, you don't have the future value to enter here. We need to calculate it. So to calculate it or to compute it, press this button that is labeled compute. CPT stands for compute, so compute. Then you press the future value button, so it will compute the future value, and that is 1,629. As you can see, it was really simple and straightforward to do it. Now gradually we'll solve more complex problems. Like in the next example, we'll see what happens if the interest rate had a different compounding. Let's say instead of having an annual compounding, it was compounded quarterly. Alright, so let's move on to a new screen.